Okay, we've been talking about this for weeks here on Locked On Auburn. All of a sudden, everybody wants to talk about it.
Well, Zach, I actually just finished crushing some chicken parm. I am freaking ready to rock and roll.
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Coming up on today's show, we will hear from Derick Hall and voice of the Auburn Tigers, Andy Burcham. Sat down with both of those at SEC Media Days last week. But first things first, it's Wednesday. So happy War Rapport Wednesday to all of you out there who celebrate. Mike G of the War Rapport in the house. And Mike G, you're seeing this. I'm seeing it. Everybody's talking about Koy Moore right now, the transfer wide receiver from LSU. And look, I'm a little salty, but also extremely happy for Koy because I think he's going to be incredible this season. I think you've got high hopes for him as well. But as soon as he committed, Mike G, I'm like, this guy has a chance to lead Auburn in receiving. This guy has a chance to really transform this offense. And what did I hear in response, Mike G? No, he could hardly play at LSU, or no, he transferred too late into the process, or no, he was, he entered the portal. He was in the portal for forever. Nobody would want him. He's not going to have that type of impact. And then Mike G, who was the first player? Who was the first player that Bryan Harsin talked to when he spoke to the local media?
Yeah, it was Koy Moore.
It was Koy Moore, Mike G, and I think that means something.
Hey, listen, it's okay, Zach, to toot your own horn every once in a while, because every once in a while we get one right, and you were right about Koy Moore. Now, listen, the idea that I think that we need to dispel is that these kids that leave other programs couldn't hack it there, so they can't hack it here. Sure. That's a crap narrative. I'm sorry. There's too many examples of kids who couldn't see the field at the program they were at and went elsewhere to be superstars. So, the Justin Fields of the world lost, transferred out of Georgia and look what happened to him. Joe Burrow was third in somebody's quarterback room at some point. Transferred to LSU, had probably the best season we've ever seen from a quarterback ever.
Koy Moore, greater than Joe Burrow, confirmed.
Right. So, but I don't know why anybody would doubt why a kid that's come from a program that has produced so many dynamic receivers over the years. It's just possible that wide receiver room was crowded. Talent evaluation is not an exact science. Just because a kid didn't win the job in spring ball doesn't mean that he's not the best suited to hit the field. It happens all the time. Like, coaches are not infallible. They're not perfect people, and talent evaluation isn't an exact science. So we need to start to accept that some of these kids, and we're going to see more and more of it with the portal, and there's the opportunity there for them to right or wrong and leave a program and go someplace else. Koy Moore is coming out of a program that has identified wide receivers at a very high clip, and he has a chance to be a star here. When Harsin was asked, the question was asked not only in the press gaggle that we did, but in front of the national media, he talked about Hilliard, and Harsin described Koy Moore as somebody who could catch the ball and take it to the house. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but a home run hitter. And his teammates in the interviews that we've done have described him as a guy who doesn't miss.
Right. And this is a guy that'll catch a slant the first practice, or the first snap of practice, he'll catch a slant. He'll make some guys miss, and it's a touchdown.
Right.
And I mean, you just talk about explosiveness at the wide receiver position. That's something that we haven't really heard from or heard of much in this room. And look, I've been very consistent over the last probably 2 or 3 seasons, really since this show's taken off, is this receiving core is filled with number 2 and number 3 options.
Right.
And they need one guy to step up, become a number 1 option in the SEC, and then everybody else will fall into place. Shedrick Jackson will benefit from it. Malcolm Johnson Jr. will benefit from it. John Samuel Shanker will benefit from it. Landon King. Everybody then is able to kind of fall into place with where they should be in an SEC offense. And I think with how offenses have evolved and what we've seen throughout college football and even in the NFL, Koy Moore is a guy that you were able to move around the field. He played a lot of his snaps at the slot at LSU, and I think he's going to do that at Auburn. But, he's going on y'all's show in a little bit. He came on my show a few weeks ago, and he talked about just kind of being able to do a little bit of everything, because whatever is asked of him, Koy Moore is going to find a way to do it and help Auburn's offense be better. And I just think he has a lot of traits, Mike G, a lot of traits that people look for in their number one wide receiver. I mean, I have been sold on Koy Moore since he's been on campus, but I'm glad that he's finally getting some love before the season starts.
Listen, ultimately, this is a conversation about wide receivers, obviously, but receivers can't throw the ball to themselves. So
Sure.
His success will be highly dependent on the success from the quarterback position. And when you talk about catching balls over the middle and being able to take one to the house, ball placement and accuracy is going to be critical in making sure that he can maximize his skills at that position, right? So, throwing the ball on time, we saw some of that during A-Day from almost all the quarterbacks. Garner threw a lot of outs and quick things to the sideline, but both Robby Ashford and TJ Finley threw dimes over the middle to Capers and Shedrick Jackson, where they were able to catch the ball.
And is awesome.
Yep, and stay out of harm's way. Right. So Harsin, during our film review of the 8A film with the quarterbacks, pointed out hey, TJ did a great job here not getting Shedrick killed on this throw with a DB in the area and a catch over the middle. Now, we didn't get to see Zach Calzada in the mix because of the injury, but, with the work that we've been seeing on social media, that he's doing a lot of those timing things, those slant routes, those things over the middle that require precision in passing. It's going to be critical. It's going to help Koy Moore be one of the better receivers I think that we've seen. So I'm hoping that this offense gets that together for him. Balance will be important. So being able to throw to him and not so obvious passing downs, some improvements in the run game. This team can be much improved. There's a lot of pessimism around the talent that we have, just because a lot of people haven't seen what Koy Moore can do yet. Right. These guys just have to go out there and show it. I'm excited about him. I think that he helps fill an important gap while kids, the young kids like Omari Kelly and Camden Brown and Jay Fair mature into the game and then take over. Right. So getting a kid like Koy Moore, super important for this program. Yeah,
there's no question about it. And I think his skill set is kind of part of what this offense needs. Those quick little I'm a Patriots guy, so Tom Brady and Julian Edelman called it this all the time, but drive starters, these quick, 3-yard passes that set up a 2nd and 6 or a 2nd and 5. I think that's what Auburn needs. And then, if you can do that, whether it's with Koy Moore or Shedrick Jackson or whoever it may be, John Samuel Shanker, I think makes sense here. Auburn needs to have an open playbook on 2nd down consistently. And I think that's going to help this offensive line. I think it's going to help the play callers, obviously, in the quarterback. But if a defense has to respect Tank Bigsby on 2nd down consistently this season, it just helps everybody. Because from a personnel standpoint, you can't empty all of your linebackers all of a sudden because, there's a chance that Auburn could get some running action in. I mean, there's just so many different things that come with it when you have a guy that's good in tight spaces like Koy Moore is, and we've seen that in a small sample size at LSU, where he can catch the ball in traffic and go down to the ground with a ball in his hands, and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 4, and the defense has to defend everything. That is huge to me.
Well, the relationship between different facets of the offense is symbiotic, right? So if you cannot run the ball, passing the ball gets harder in every offense except for Mike Leach's. And for us, again, having people have to respect Tank on 2nd down, like you said, again, opens up the middle of the field for guys like Koy Moore to go in and make plays and make people miss and make defenses defend the whole field against Auburn, right? Deep, over the middle, short, and in the run game. So Koy Moore helps us with that over the middle. Now I think he thinks he's a deep threat as well. So we don't want to sell him short there, but I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Did he talk about running posts a million times in y'all's conversation?
He talked about a lot of things. I don't want to give away the interview, but
okay.
He talked about a lot of stuff, and he's a supremely confident guy, I think. And Auburn needs that. Auburn needs more bravado. They need more confidence, and Koy Moore provides that in spades, I think.
I think you're right. All right, we got to answer the question: can Auburn have a 1,000-yard receiver in 2022? It's been forever. Can it happen? And also, I want to ask Mike G. There was a quarterback narrative that I think kind of emerged last week at media days. I want to see if he caught that or if I'm just seeing things. All right, here on Locked On Auburn. But hey, I got to tell you about our friends at betonline.net. They are the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs, including finding your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. You can find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf, and of course, college football. You can check all of it out at BetOnline. That's where the game starts. Mike G, before we jump into answering some of these questions, how can people find everything you got going on?
Head on over to YouTube, search the War Rapport, hit subscribe, become a patron. We've got lots of great things going on over at the War Rapport this season, and including film reviews. We will continue player interviews. We're going to bring you guys more access all the time at the War Rapport 24/7. So subscribe and enjoy.
All right, so let's spend just a few minutes on this. Could Auburn have a 1,000-yard receiver in 2022? It's been so long. Darvin Adams is close, so close, a reception away probably. But can Koy Moore do it? Can Malcolm Johnson Jr. do it? Can DeVarge Dawson do it? Can anybody go for 1,000 yards in this offense in 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Now, this is all predicated on the fact that the deep ball is coming back this year.
Sure.
Being able to hit passes deep is going to be really important because, again, when we send receivers on those go routes, the guys that play over the middle, right, will have a chance to eat. Your Koy Moores, I think we'll be using Shedrick Jackson in that capacity. So you're talking about somebody who was just over 500 yards receiving last year. I think in a competent offense in year two, I would not be surprised to see one of those guys double the catches and double the yards this year. I don't think it's a stretch. So what we saw last year was we saw Bryan Harsin and his staff bring some competency back to the passing game at Auburn.
Sure.
Bo Nix improved under Bryan Harsin. I'll say it again for the people in the back. Bo Nix improved under Bryan Harsin at Auburn. Now, it wasn't as consistent as we would have liked, but the inconsistencies that we saw were kind of remnants of the past, right? Like, it's not going to turn it all around in one season. What we hope to see this season is that a guy like Zach Calzada or Robby Ashford or TJ Finley or whoever's the quarterback takes the next step in this offense, right? In there for TJ, I would say this would be fair to call this his second year start. I mean, the combination of his first year and the games that he started at Auburn kind of comprise like 1 year of starting in the SEC, if that's fair. Robby Ashford doesn't have the experience, but he's got the hunger. And Zach Calzada, this would be his second year. This is the year you see a guy like that take a step forward in this offense. And if he can do that, then these receivers have a chance. I can't stress enough, they cannot throw the ball to themselves. So they're going to design some things. These guys are going to get their opportunities. We've got to cut down on the drops early in the season. That was a problem. You cannot have 1,000-yard receivers and be in the top fourth of the league in drops.
Right. No,
right.
Not a good combo.
Yes,
so, Mike, right there, you mentioned the quarterbacks, and I want to get your thoughts on the speculation that I had at media days.
Okay.
It seemed like the other Auburn quarterbacks disappeared, and it was all about Zach Calzada. I don't know if that's because we heard a lot about Calzada when A&M went, and so you kind of got, a double dosage of Zach Calzada chatter. I don't know if it's just because folks asked about Zach Calzada to, the Auburn contingency or the Auburn representation in Atlanta, and they didn't really ask about TJ. But to me, and I went on a bunch of other people's shows, and they all asked about Calzada, nothing about Finley. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so Calzada is kind of winning the offseason, if you ask me, with the fans.
Yeah, there's no question about it.
I'm talking about perception. Now, what's actually going on behind the scenes, not a whole lot of people are privy to. But he's been very open. He's out on Twitter, Zach, with his social media, working with his QB coach, Ray Isaacs, sniper school guy. I've talked to him. He hit me up on my way back from media days. They had a great workout in Auburn that weekend that I got back. And
he posted all kind of pictures and videos about it, right?
Yeah, listen, Zach Calzada is not being shy about the fact that he wants people to know that he's working. Now, I'll refer back to our interview with him. He's here for business. This is a business decision coming to Auburn for him. And this is a guy who, left the program that he started almost every game for to say, hey, like, I like the vision here. Right. I like the opportunity here. And he didn't come here to sit. Now, I would say that Calzada, the reason you see a lot of the buzz around Calzada is because he actually did put on the field last year something more tangible to give people a base for saying this guy could take the next step this year.
Right.
Like it or love it, TJ Finley did not do that. No. Now, whether the circumstances allowed for him or whether it was fair, that's a whole different discussion.
Tough situation for Finley. No question.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, for Robby Ashford, love the talent, but he doesn't have the on-field experience just yet.
He hasn't played. Right.
Right. So he would have to had won the offseason by a long shot to forego a guy who went out. And if you go back and, some people hate when I bring up this game that Calzada played against Bama, but every time I watch it, I'm more impressed with him. He stood in the pocket. He took hits almost to the detriment of his health.
Well, it's in there, right? Like, he's capable of it.
Right. We saw it.
Yeah. I'm a big, you got to take away somebody's best performance and their worst performance. Mm-hmm. And what's left is probably there. Just like when you talk about, seasons with NFL quarterbacks or whatever, take away their best season, take away their worst season. And then the average of everything else is pretty much what you're looking at.
That's fair.
And I think he's fine. I think it was last year. If you take away his best performance and his worst performance probably was his first game where I think it was against Colorado.
Yeah. Well, he got thrown in in the second quarter or something.
Totally. Yeah. Similar to what happened with Finley. So yeah, it's just tough to overcome that. But I think he was probably an average to slightly above average SEC quarterback. But as you just said, you take your biggest step after your first full season as a starter. And that was essentially what he just had. So I'm with you, man. I think there's a lot of tangible stats. Justin Ferguson with the Auburn Observer has done a lot of, deep dives statistically and Pro Football Focus stuff about how he's ready to take a big step. I mean, there's a lot to like, I think, about Zach Calzada. He's got to do it. All these things that we're projecting to happen, he has to do it in order for it to be exciting, or it's going to be, a tough situation for Auburn next year if he doesn't do it, I think, with the schedule. But yeah, it's just interesting. Like all last week, I was like, man, nobody's even trying to build up the drama that there's a quarterback battle. They're just fine talking about Calzada being the dude.
I posted we caught Harsin on a one-on-one before media days was over, and I knew he was going to give me coach speak, but I got to ask the question just in case he let something slip, right? And I said, Coach, everybody wants to know about quarterback. Everybody wants to know what's happening here. Talk about your situation at quarterback. He was complimentary of all the quarterbacks, of course, and he wants there to be a competition headed into fall camp. Now that time is coming. We're about 3 weeks out from that. So somebody's got to start to separate. And there was a lot of work that's being done that the coaches can observe, but they can't be out there. And you can't, what we've learned about this system and what we've learned from the players is nobody's going to spoon feed it to you. And that's what I think. That's why I think Zach Calzada kind of won the offseason perception, right? Sure. Is that nobody's going to tell you to go out and throw extra balls. Nobody's going to tell you to go corral the receivers. Nobody's going to tell you to put in the extra work to be great. You have to show that. And Calzada wanted everybody to know, I'm here to be great. That's it. So whether that translates to the field or not, we'll see. But, if you were trying to send a message to his coaching staff that when I'm called on, I'm going to be ready, right. I think he did that.
No, I think you're right. Mike G, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. One more time, how can people find everything you're doing?
Just head on over to the War Rapport on YouTube. Check us out. We'll be launching thewarreport.com here in a few weeks. It's going to be a source for Auburn fans to go and find interesting things on Auburn, some unique things we're going to be doing over there, as well as find all our content, including our podcast. So look out for that. We'll be making announcements shortly.
All right, coming up in just a moment, our conversation with Derick Hall, then our conversation with voice of the Auburn Tigers, Andy Burcham. All coming up right here on Locked On Auburn. Joining us now here on Locked On Auburn, Derick Hall, Auburn Edge, joining us, new defensive coordinator, second year in a row. What's kind of been like adjusting that this offseason?
So Smith was there last year. Obviously he got promoted to the DC position, and so it really wasn't that big of a difference. I mean, we already knew him. We knew the kind of coach that he was, the way he approaches the game. So it really wasn't that big of a difference. The scheme is pretty much the same. I mean, he's made his little tweaks here and there about the way he want to do things, verbiage on the back end. I mean, little tweaks in the scheme, but pretty much every call is the same.
Is the verbiage the same?
He's changed it a little bit in his aspect, which I'm not going to disclose, obviously. But
sure.
He's made the verbiage cleaner and a lot simpler to communicate in the heat of the battle.
There's been a big talking point this offseason about depth at your position. Obviously, you and Eku ready to have a great season. Oh, yeah. Tell us about the guys behind you, if you would.
Right. So we just got Marcus in from Western Kentucky. He's looking really good. Dylan's looking good. His body's transforming. He's getting bigger, faster, stronger. Joko actually just moved over to the edge position. He's a natural. Right. He just had to put on a little bit of weight and get bigger. But, I mean, Rock's going to get those guys ready. And, we're going to do everything we can, me and Leota, just at that position, the head of that position, to be able to push those guys in the right direction because, they have no choice but to play. We're low on numbers, and we need those guys.
Best of luck to you this season, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Joining us now here on Locked On Auburn, the voice of the Auburn Tigers, Andy Burcham. Happy SEC Media Days to you, my friend.
I've been up here. I've been at these for a couple of years now. It changes every year.
How so?
Well, initially, there was a smaller print room,
right,
for only the print media. There were several TV rooms for the local TV folks.
Right.
Jefferson Pilot had its own room. I think ESPN may have had its own room. And then the rest of it was for radio. There was no podcasting.
Right.
At that point, there was a small radio room, and that's where you did the interviews. And a lot of the times the players and coaches would not come up to what is now, what we used to call Radio Row.
Yeah. Now it's just row.
Yeah, exactly. So it has changed dramatically, and I think will continue to change.
I think it's pretty cool. And props to the SEC for rolling with kind of whatever the preferred form of media is at that time, but obviously still radio king up here for sure. What do we think about these Auburn Tigers?
It's going to be an interesting year. It's an interesting schedule. I think Auburn has to set the tone with those first 5 home games. The schedule is brutal, as it is every year. Coach Harsin addressed that in his press conference earlier today.
Right.
But those first 5 games are important just as a tone setter for this team. You need to be 2-0. I think they will be going into Penn State. And then you've got Missouri for the first time ever at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Just the second time in the regular season, and just the third time ever in football.
That's interesting.
And then you get LSU. And then you go on the road for 2 straight weeks, Georgia and Ole Miss, and you still have to go to State. You still have to go to Alabama, and you got A&M and Arkansas coming in, and Western Kentucky.
Brutal
to close. Yeah, it's a brutal schedule, but I think you got it. You have to set the tone with those first 5 games for that second half of the schedule.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And there's so much on this quarterback battle, right? I mean, whether it's Zach Calzada, whether it's CJ Finley, most people think it will be Zach Calzada. That's going to really kind of be a big part of where this offense goes.
As it would be for any team.
Correct.
The quarterback spot. With that said, I think there is more I don't know if pressure is the right word, more importance on what Auburn's tailbacks do this year than perhaps in recent years. And for Tank Bigsby, listen, he knew that it was going to be Bo Nix at quarterback every time he went out.
Right.
Until Bo was injured and then transferred. Now, is it TJ Finley? Is it Zach Calzada? Is it Robby Ashford?
Sure.
At this point. I think we'll probably learn pretty quick in fall camp who that's going to be. But I think regardless, and both TJ and Zach have SEC experience. TJ actually has Auburn SEC experience.
Right.
The known entity that Auburn has on offense right now is at tailback.
Correct.
And Tank Bigsby.
Correct.
And to a certain degree, Jarquez Hunter.
No question.
And a somewhat veteran offensive line.
I mean, we know who they are, certainly.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be a little bit different from last year, but for the most part, it's going to be the same.
And don't diminish how good Auburn is at the tight end spot and the depth that it has at tight end. It's so good that they can think about putting Landon King at the wide receiver spot, and you don't lose anything at the tight end spot right now.
Right. That's a great point. That's a great point. What has kind of been your assessment of how Bryan Harsin handled his opening statement?
I thought it was terrific. I thought the tact that he took. Let's talk about it right up front, as he called it, the gorilla in the room.
Yep. Which it was. I mean, it was this massive presence that needed to be addressed.
And he did it. He didn't wait for the questions to come about it. He addressed it. I thought he was candid.
Right.
In how he talked about its effect on the team, on the program, on he and his family as well.
Yeah.
And I thought that was important.
I mean, you're close to the program. I mean, it seems like every player that's talked about it, whether it's been on this show or other shows, or, Bryan Harsin earlier today. I mean, it seems like it really has brought this team closer together.
Here's the one thing, Zach, and I did a bunch of the various alumni events in Huntsville and Montgomery and Mobile. And then I go around and speak to various alumni groups. Whether you like Bryan Harsin or not, whether you think he's done a good job or not, here's the one thing I know about Bryan Harsin. After February, we know this man wants to be the Auburn football coach.
Yeah.
It'd have been easy to take the money and run from Auburn, right?
Sure.
And he didn't.
Right.
And guys like John Samuel Schenker, who's here at Media Days, and Tank Bigsby, and Derick Hall could also be playing football for somebody else this year as well, right?
Right.
Some guys decided to do that. My best to them, okay? But these guys that decided to come back, they want to play for this university.
Yes.
They want to play with their guys, their teammates, and they want to play for this coach and this coaching staff. And I think that says a great deal about all of those folks.
Yeah, the story from the outside media and even Auburn media, I guess, was about all the folks that left. But it's really about the folks that stayed.
Well, it is now.
Yeah.
It is now. These are the guys that fought through it. These are the guys that ended a year in a not so great manner last year. There was that picture after the Iron Bowl of those seniors sitting there in the stands, reflecting on careers, reflecting on that game. And a lot of those guys decided, you know what? I've got another year. I'm coming back.
Yeah, let's do it one more time.
That's exactly right. And they'll be doing it with another team that isn't picked very high in the SEC West, and I understand that. Another team that will go through a brutal schedule in the Southeastern Conference. And they will go through it after a winter of discontent. And yet those guys decided, this is my school, this is my team, this is my coach, this is where I'm playing ball.
Andy Burcham, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, bud. War Eagle.
Thank you so much to all three of the fine gentlemen that joined us today. Mike G of the War Rapport, Derick Hall, Andy Burcham. And we get to be joined by John Garcia on tomorrow's edition of the show. Talk a little recruiting. Big weekend for Auburn recruiting coming up. I'm Zac Blackerby. Follow me on Twitter at @ZBlackerby. All of my written work is at auburndaily.com. We'll be back tomorrow right here on Locked On Auburn.